Now, I do not want to come off as melodramatic, but Gary, is this not the most important game Michigan State that the Huskers have had in the last decade? Specifically, the fact that we're one game away from a bowl appearance, which has eluded us for a decade or more.
Yeah, I mean it is, but it's also like it's a moving target, right? So if for some reason we lose this week, now Maryland is the biggest game. And then if we lose that game, you get into Wisconsin and you keep going all the way to Iowa. We just need one more game. And like in that sense, it kind of plays into what Rule's saying with the 1-0 thing. The next game's the biggest game, right? And like, I don't mean that from a coach speak standpoint. It's just we need one more win to get into a bowl game. It's not a big game as far as if we were to have knocked off Michigan or a big statement game or whatever. It's just whatever game we win that puts us in a bowl game, that's going to be the biggest game since the last time we were in a bowl game. Right. So you can put all the window dressing on it and everything that you want to. But if for some reason, whatever reason, they're better, we shit the bed, have a lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers, whatever it is, Nebraska loses this game, the season's not over. If this were the last game of the season, I'd agree with you. But it is if we win, but it's not if we lose, if that makes sense. Like we can lose this game and now the next game becomes the biggest game. You know, so it's all about just making a bowl game. And that's why it's pivotal. But again, with 4 games left, if we lose this game, now the next one's pivotal.
So we'll just cut to the chase. Gary and I both think that the Huskers are going to get a win, but tell us in the comments if you're expecting a win, and if so, do you have a score prediction? The 3 things that are leading me to think that the Huskers are going to find a way to win this game is obviously the fact that Michigan State is on a 6-game losing streak, but also their recent loss against Minnesota that was 27-12. I'm sure Minnesota is in a different place and they're a different team at this point in the season than they were when we faced them. I mean, God knows we're a different team now, almost night and day. But not being able to hang with Minnesota, I just don't see how Michigan State is then the favorite against the Huskers. And combining Michigan State's 6-game losing streak with our 3-game win streak, I just feel like signs are staring me right in the face that this is going to be a Husker win one way or another. It might be ugly because they've got nothing to lose. And if the Huskers get off to a crummy start again with a turnover or a fumble or a botched kick like we've been doing, and we give them an early lead, that could be problematic. But even then, I kind of expect the Huskers to just find a way like they have been.
That kind of speaks to the improvement of the team, in my opinion, where we have a month's worth of proof or tape where you can look back and go, oh, Nebraska shits the bed on the first drive of the game, whether it's offense or defense, and they still win relatively convincingly, right? Like, I don't think either one of us a year ago at this point thought that would be the case. You know, if something goes bad and we're up 2 scores, we still found a way to lose, let alone if something goes bad off the gate when it's tied 0-0. A case that could be made for Michigan State is their 2 wins are non-conference wins, and you can shrug that off. But when you look at who they've lost to Michigan, to Iowa, to Wisconsin, Minnesota like we have. I think Maryland, basically the better teams in the conference are their losses. So I think if I'm a Michigan State fan or coach or somebody on staff, I'm going, okay, really you were supposed to lose those games. You know, your coach got fired. There's a turnaround happening. There's all the shit that's been over the university for however long. But now you're playing a team that's down and out like you are. But from our perspective, we're climbing out of that gutter, climbing out of that hole. And this is a real chance for us to kind of solidify everything we've been seeing, the overcoming the little hurdles and the little obstacles that would have always tripped us up in previous years. They're just non-issues anymore, right? Like I'm saying, if they win this game, you're kind of putting that to bed in a sense because, okay, not only are you finally going to a bowl, but you're going to a bowl with 3 games left to play. And to go from being out of bowl contention and out of the Big Ten picture in any way, shape, or form by the beginning of October to having the season, a winning season and a bowl appearance and still being in the hunt for the Big Ten West in November is crazy, right? Like that's a big turnaround, and a lot of people don't think it's fast enough. It's not as flashy as other schools, whatever. We've talked about that ad nauseum, but it just kind of puts a lot of things into perspective. And I understand what Rule's doing with what he's saying, both publicly and to the team, to try and get guys. He's really, really, really leaning into that 1-0. like just worry about this week. But I mean, when you look at talent, you look at stats, you look at previous games, there's really no reason that Nebraska should lose this game. They for sure can lose it. I'm not saying there's no way they will lose it. They could lose the game. They could beat themselves. Michigan State could play a hell of a game. Balls out, like you're saying. They've got nothing to lose. That's how they're going to play. But I really don't see it happening. I mean, they're not ranked in any category very high. Like you alluded to the record. You look on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they've got some decent athletes, but statistically, I think their leading sack guy is a linebacker with like 3 sacks or something like that. You know, Purdue had 2 of them that were over 5. You know, and you and I were talking earlier, they seem to run the ball a little bit better than they pass, but it's still not that good. And you're playing a Nebraska team whose bread and butter is stopping the run, and they can get to the quarterback. They might not get to the quarterback as well as they stop the run, but they can also do that. So if they take away the one thing you're decent at, and they can really hinder the secondary thing. The only thing that has me a little worried about this game is the spread. To me, the spread should be way more than 3. I feel like Vegas always has I don't mean to go tinfoil hat, but Vegas always kind of has an inside idea of something. So it could be ugly. I think Nebraska's not more hurt than they've been. If anything, they're more healthy than they've been in a few weeks with, Reimer back and different guys on the offensive line having a week of actual starting and things like that. I think the offensive line's coming along halfway decent compared to what it's looked like before. When I look at these games, I try to look at, okay, if this scenario, then this result, or if this scenario, then this result. It's just hard for me to find a scenario where I feel confident saying Michigan State could win, other than if Nebraska has 4 or 5 turnovers and a bunch of penalties. I hate doing the score predictions just because you can't anticipate really the turnovers or the penalties that might happen. But let's just assume everything's relatively clean and relatively even, or, God forbid Nebraska wins a turnover battle again. But I think Nebraska wins a 2-3 possession game. Like I want to say maybe like a 31-10 type game with Nebraska. It might take a while for them to pull ahead and really, have that separation. It might not be as close of a game as the score suggests, but you could argue some of these previous games weren't as close as the score made you think in Nebraska's favor. So it's a lot of ifs, but I think it depends on how Nebraska starts, the turnovers from the offensive side, and then, penalties. Like, are we going to give them free first downs on 3rd and longs? Or are we going to take ourselves from 3rd and shorts to 3rd and longs? Those types of things, I think, is where you could kind of decipher the score differential. But I think watching the game, no scores, but just watching the game, you're going to go, oh yeah, they're kind of dominating this team. I could be wrong, and they could have somebody that blows up and does something. I just haven't seen anything watching film on them and looking at their stats and watching all of our games, looking at our stats and things. I just don't see where like a mismatch kind of plays in their favor.
I'm going to go this week with 27-17 Huskers, and it could be ugly along the way, but they still get the win by 10. Tell us what you guys think in the comments. Can't wait to see you guys for this live stream. Each one has been bigger than the last, and this is a huge game, so it should be a lot of fun. We'll see you then. Go Big Red.